Hey Sanjay, how are you?
Hey, Ruben. Good to see you as always.
Yeah, good to see you again. Hey, some news again that recently hit about this time it's Zillow. And looks like they're hiring their own agents. Have you heard about it?
I have. It seems like all the news these days is about Zillow. Yes, I think Inman reported through an article written by Michael Delpreet, who is a real estate industry thought leader, influencer. Delpreet wrote that Zillow is now hiring their own agents in-house to help facilitate their iBuying process. And I think his message was, look, it's not something that agents should ignore because, I think he calls it a mega trend. And I guess, at WikiRealty, we couldn't agree more. I mean, this is just another sort of a rung in the ladder in terms of how these tech companies are slowly moving, up the transaction process to sort of take over the entire transaction.
So what does this mean for realtors and loan officers?
Yeah, it just, underscores once again that, the tech companies that originally said that they weren't going to compete with you are in fact doing just that, and they're doubling down every step of the way. I mean, Zillow went from, hey, we're a media company, to now they're buying homes directly from sellers and working directly with buyers. And they are also hiring their own agents to facilitate the transaction. I mean, previously, their story was that they were going to be using Zillow Premier agents to facilitate those transactions. So there wasn't really as much of the Premier agents that are paying Zillow to advertise on their platform are at least sort of brought into that process. Now it looks like those Premier agents are being booted from that process as well. So I think Zillow is trying to, have, every cake in the shop and eat all of the cakes too.
Yeah, that doesn't seem too fair. I mean, especially if, the revenue is coming from, the real estate agents and trying to support them. I mean, it seems like a conflict to hire your own agents and just do it
Yeah.
yourself. I mean, cut them, they're basically cutting realtors out.
Yeah, I don't think that at this point Zillow is trying to support agents in any way. They're trying to obviously support their business, which you can't really, I guess blame them for. I mean, we're a capitalist society, right? So
Yeah.
they know they've got the consumer traffic and consumer mind share, so they're taking the dollars that they can from the agents that want a piece of that consumer mind share. But at the same time, they are not being shy about the fact that they're telling the world now that, yeah, we're also going to compete with these agents too. So I think, the message in the article was, hey, real estate professionals, don't have your head in the sand and don't ignore these trends. Be informed at a minimum so that you know how to compete. There's some agents that say, look, I'm just going to rely on the fact that I give great service and I'm going to ignore what happens in the tech industry. Then there are other agents that see every little movement and panic and buy every shiny object. And I think he's saying you got to fall somewhere in the middle ground. Stay informed and react accordingly.
So what do you think, agents and loan officers, brokers, people in the real estate industry, like, how should they be thinking about this? How should they compete?
It's really about connecting with the consumer very early on in the process. That is, your greatest hope of showing that consumer that you bring value to the transaction and you're going to help facilitate that transaction from the beginning, which is home search, all the way through closing. I mean, consumers are looking for a simplified, unified experience where there is the least amount of hassle to them. So if they can hook their wagon to, a person, an agent that can show them that they're going to provide them with that value, and there's going to be little to no hassle that they're going to have to deal with, I think the consumer every day of the week is going to pick the real person as opposed to dealing with a technology company. So it really boils down to get to the consumer very early on. I mean, the risk in not doing so is that the tech companies are going to get their hooks in that consumer. And once you're in that tech company process, whether it's iBuying, whether it's digital mortgages, it's really hard to convince the consumer to go backwards and start again with you.
Okay, if getting to the customer first is the key, then how do agents get to those consumers first?
Well, I guess what they shouldn't do is just talk about themselves all the time and talk about their property listings. That's not really conveying any value beyond just sort of pitching their products and their property listings. Consumers don't like that. It doesn't really differentiate the agents from every other agent that's doing that. It's really about providing value to the consumer early on. That by doing that, you build that trust, you build that relationship, and that's what consumers are looking for. People like to work with people that they like and trust. And what we found is that sharing sort of the hyper local information that helps consumers decide where they want to live is the best way to sort of form that connection and build that trust and relationship. And you got to do that very early on, even before they've identified a property or identified the neighborhood that they want to live in. Sorry.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, hey, thank you for jumping on and giving your insights there and sharing your opinion on this latest news of what's going on with Zillow and hiring agents.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure this isn't the last piece of news we're going to hear. I'm sure there are going to be many more bombshells that are going to be dropped in the very near future. So
Yeah.
If I'm a realtor, I'm a loan officer, I'm doing everything I can to build my presence online and get to that customer first. Make sure you're who they think of when they're ready to transact.
But I appreciate you taking the time now and sharing your thoughts and insights.
Thanks, Durbin.
Thanks.